Are you an accounting or tax professional who wants to stay ahead without spending a dime? Join thousands who trust insightful accountant and tax practice news to keep them informed and empowered. Get expert updates on QuickBooks, Xero, tax planning strategies, and workflow tips delivered straight to your inbox. Whether you're a solo bookkeeper, firm leader, or tax advisor, these newsletters are your shortcut to what's next in the profession. They're free, practical, and built for people like you. Visit insightfulaccountant.com and hit subscribe to start your smarter workflow today for free.
Welcome, everyone, to the February edition of QB Talks. This is Bill Murphy. Almost all of you know me as Murph, and I'll be your host today. And our guest speaker is Caren Schwartz, and she will be talking about all things legal. Really, she's going to give you some professional tips on how to focus on the legal law firm attorney area as part of your pro advisor practice. And before we get to the program, I'm not going to go over that. Almost all of you know me. I need to take care of some housekeeping. Today's webinar is eligible for CPE. In order to obtain CPE credits, you must be here 50 minutes, and you must actually answer, right or wrong, it doesn't matter, all three of the actual CPE polls. Now, we'll have a handful of polls, 5 or 6, but only 3 of those are the CPE polls during the actual presentation on the topic matter. The presentation PDF and recording will be available after today's show, and you'll be sent links about how you can access that information. We will only be using questions and answers today, and I will be trying to take care of as many questions as possible. We'll pull a few ripe or choice questions, perhaps for Caren to answer either during her presentation or after. The chat is turned off to attendees. We will not be using chat. And so if you've got something to say, be sure you put it in the Q&A. And so the first element that I have to talk about is that the Pro Advisor Awards, I guess I'll always call them that, the Top Advisor Awards for 2026 are still underway. While the nomination period has ended, the application period has not. If you are a qualified advisor, you can still apply for the awards through early next month, and you'll go to the awards portal and you'll find that the application routes are there. And I know that's a little bitty QR code, so there's a much bigger one. You'll have an opportunity again to see this later in today's program. So if you miss it now, you can catch it near the very end. And next, as I mentioned, Caren Schwartz will be here, and she will be presenting, but I have a technical glitch, I'm sorry, and give me just a moment, and I'm going to try to get this resolved. Okay, so if you would like more information about Insightful Accountant or Be Insightful paid membership program or the Top Advisor Awards, just answer yes to this polling question that Matt has thrown open, and we're not going to leave it open long. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thanks. And next on our list is our sponsor for today. And Basis is our sponsor today. And with me today is Zoe McCarthy. She leads the sales team for Basis official QuickBooks integration designed to simplify payment acceptance and reconciliation for accountants and their clients. And really, folks, what this is an alternative to QuickBook payments. So those of you who've been looking for alternatives to QuickBook payments, this really is something you should consider. And Zoe, I will let you go ahead and just share your screen if you've got a presentation. And if you're going to go live, you can be able to do that. So feel
Cool.
free to go ahead and take over the share.
All right. Thank you, William. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the time. Excited to get into this. And yes, I'm with Basis. I'm the sales lead here, and we've been within the payment solution space for the past 20 years here based out of the Kansas City area. So I'm excited to share my screen here in a moment and provide a little bit more context on our QuickBooks integration. I want to note, but before I dive in, please feel free to fire off any questions within the chat. I have some team members here who will be able to answer those questions. So any and all, there's no stupid questions. We'd love to provide a little bit more context on anything you got. But with that,
let me remind everybody, please use the Q&A, not the chat.
apologies.
Okay? That's all right.
Q&A only, please. Perfect. All right. I'm going to replace current share right now and go ahead over here. Can everyone see that?
We can now.
Fabulous. Okay, we'll go ahead and get into it here. And actually, let me pull this up here. Perfect.
Be careful of using that word.
Awesome. So, like I mentioned, we are formal, or I guess we are within the payment solution space basis, and we have been for the past 20 years. And with that, we have created this current QuickBooks solution. So we are formal integrators with QuickBooks. Now, I'll let you all read what's on the screen here, but to provide a little bit more context, we have over 20,000 clients all over the US, and it's growing. And what we heard from the feedback of our clients within the accounting space, within any other industry that you can think of, we work in them all. We knew a lot of them are using QuickBooks. QuickBooks can be used for a lot of things. Now, using QuickBooks, but also using Basis and seeing the values that we bring to the table, they're like, hey, we would love to have an integration, maybe make that a little bit easier for us. So we saw the demand, we heard the need, and that's why we created this solution. The solution is designed not to change how you use QuickBooks necessarily. It's not meant to make your life harder. It's designed to make your life easier and get all of the values that QuickBooks can provide. It's a customized interface. It allows you to have access to our white glove support team. We understand that QuickBooks sometimes be a little bit difficult to get a hold of sometimes, or maybe money is being withheld. Anything like that, within 2 rings, you can get a hold of our team right here next door to me in this office, and we're able to help you out a little bit quicker. I'll dive into all of this here in a moment as I walk you through the integration. But again, the goal here is just to provide that experience through QuickBooks, through Basis in an easy format with everything talking to each other. Now, I do want to note with QuickBooks and this integration, it does work with QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Enterprise, and QuickBooks Desktop, and most likely any of the other QuickBooks I haven't mentioned that are out there today. But what we're looking at here is an invoice of a customer, or with a customer that we created within our demo sandbox environment. I have the Tigers Industries is the company that we have here, and we are providing wedding planning services for Taylor Swift here. And as a Kansas City based company, hopefully you can put 2 and 2 together there on that example. All of this is rudimentary to you all. You all use this day in and day out. But what I want to call out here in the bottom left corner is this link to pay. So that's the only thing that is going to change when sending invoices to your clients. So that link I'm about to show you allows your customers and clients to have access to their payments or their open invoices and see those that are open, those that need to be paid, so on and so forth. So this kind of goes back into, we don't want to change how you're using QuickBooks, how you're invoicing. It's just a simple edit that we would add into your templates that allows for that customer-facing interface. Okay, so once that invoice is sent, that's when we're going to jump into the customer facing perspective. I do want to note here and pause for a moment and add, I know that not everyone uses QuickBooks the same exact way that I'm going to show you today. And I'm sure you all use it in completely different ways. I haven't spoken to one organization that uses QuickBooks the same as the other. But for this example today, hopefully you can bear with me and walk through this simple process. Again, Q&A, and if we discuss later on, we can discuss your specific use case, but just wanted to call that out as I dive into this with invoices specifically. Okay, so let's say the client receives a invoice via email. They're then going to see that email pop up, and they're going to click that hyperlink, which allows them to view their open invoices within this customer-facing portal. Now, I do want to note before I even dive into everything, this is all customizable. So we can change the logo, we can change the colors, we can change the button colors. So your customers are seeing that white labeled branded experience, so they know it's coming from you and your organization. All right. So before seeing all of their open invoices, I do like to note that we do have a couple properties that you can have your client or customers fill out in order to access this portal. Our most commons that we recommend is their last name and phone number. We could require their email, their zip code, any other identifying properties that you would like them to fill out before accessing this. We can have that in place before they see this. So it is behind that security standard, if you will. Moving on. So with this customer facing side, the customer is able to toggle on and pay all of their outstanding invoices if they would like. They can see the invoice date and the invoice number. I do want to note that that invoice number ties directly back into QuickBooks and the invoice number in QuickBooks. So I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but this is a full-on bi-directional integration. So everything is speaking to each other, whereas you're not having to go back and forth between two systems and do that dual entry. So as a customer, I can see the amount for ACH. I can see credit card. We do allow for up to a 3% admin fee to cover the cost of doing business. That can be on credit cards or ACH or both. The status of the invoice, and then of course that quick action drop down allows them to view that PDF of the invoice once more and download the PDF as needed. Now, if I'm Taylor here and I'm logging in and I'm wanting to pay off this invoice, I'm going to toggle that one on. And then I'm going to be able to pay via credit card or ACH. I also can pay via partial payment. That is completely customizable. If you don't want your clients to be paying with partial payments, we can turn that off. And then from there, being able to fill out that information as needed. And then they also can have an additional receipt sent to them if need be, providing their email and then pressing pay now. Perfect. So once it's paid, the customer can see that payment has been received. If Taylor wanted to go back in and pay more invoices, she can press pay more invoices. And once she does that, she would be able to see that that invoice that was just paid is no longer there. It has been received, and she'd be able to pay those remaining invoices as needed. So our goal here is to provide a simple view for your clients and customers of all of their outstanding invoices, rather than having to file through emails and look for things and call you and ask questions about where their invoice stands. They can simply view them all right here. Now, let's say maybe this is great for your customers to see that. Maybe that's not ideally what you would like or how your business flows. We also have a merchant-facing perspective, which I will highlight right here. So this is going to be that same branding as need be. We can change the colors, change the logo, but this would be from your perspective, as if you were logged in, you were able to see all of the open invoices for your customers. Of course, you can see this in QuickBooks, which is great, but now this allows you to maybe in person take payments, maybe over the phone, take payments. You could quickly open up this portal. So you can use this search box up at the top, search for your customer. Again, see all of those invoices that are outstanding, toggle those on and select into each one. I'm going to toggle this one on over here. Maybe Taylor wanted to pay credit card versus bank account. She can. We also allow for a physical terminal option too. So if you were taking payments in person, you'd be able to have that physical terminal there. Taylor is going to provide her card information to you. You can enter that in. And then what you're going to see here is a save payment method. So with that, we're saving Taylor's credit card information for future use. So I'm going to go ahead and press pay now. That payment's going to be received. We can click into see more invoices. We will see that that most recent invoice that we paid is no longer going to be there. I'll go back into the search bar. Maybe Taylor wanted to pay an additional one in the same instance. But now, once I toggle on that invoice that we're now going to pay, we're going to see that use save card option. So I do like to note, as a payment solutions provider and with this organization, we really prioritize not only customer support, but PCI compliance, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. So using this portal with this integration, that does ensure that you are PCI compliant. And this is a PCI compliant way of managing and handling card information. So just like that, if I'm talking to Taylor over the phone, hey, just want to confirm I've got your card saved. Is it the card ending in 1111? Yep, that's the one. Perfect. I'll go ahead and run that transaction right now. Perfect. So again, I just highlighted the customer facing perspective. We're also going to see the merchant facing perspective. Lastly, or second to lastly, I should say, going into QuickBooks, if we went back into QuickBooks and sorted those invoices by date, we'd be able to see that most recent invoice coming in and automatically accounted for. If you're using online, QuickBooks Online, that's going to be an instant update. If you're using desktop, it's going to be a couple seconds longer to get that instant update. But again, all of these systems are talking to each other. With that, this is what's going on the back end. So IQ Pro Plus, and bear with me because I know there's a lot of information that we're looking at here. IQ Pro Plus is Basis's own product. We created this product. It can provide various different things, as you see on the left-hand side here. It is a virtual terminal, but also a gateway. So that's what's making the transaction happen on the back end with this integration. So what we're looking at here on the left-hand side is the transaction side and a little bit more detail into that transaction we just completed. So if you ever wanted to just double, triple check things, you can always log into our gateway IQ Pro Plus here and make sure everything is aligning. So we can see the invoice number is matching that invoice number we had within QuickBooks. I do want to reiterate though, that this is not something that you would have to do day to day. This is more or less just a gut check for people who maybe just want to confirm some things or reconcile some things additionally. But this is our system on the back end. Now, wrapping up here, I wanted to just quickly highlight a little bit more about us, Basis. So I mentioned this earlier, but we have been around for about 20 years. So we have really narrowed into this space and learned so much and prioritize our clients within this space. So we're privately owned and operated. Our CEO is here today. And what that means is we really value partnership over just another customer for us, if you will. Our client retention is over 90%. So what that means is that we are looking to truly work with you moving forward. We are not just looking for another client to then offboard in a year. And our average client retention is about 10 years. And we have that in-house customer support, which I highlighted earlier. So they're right next door behind me. You are never going to be met with an IVR or an AI or an automated response when you call in. When you call into our customer support, they're going to be met or meeting you with a hello and a live human being. So you'll get those questions answered. PCI compliance, I touched on this briefly earlier, but we do have an in-house PCI compliance team to ensure that you are compliant. We know that that can be a lot of work and it's tough to figure out what exactly is going on. So we have the experts here in-house to make sure you're taken care of. And then lastly, our net promoter score. So this is a score from -100 to +100. I'll keep it short, but this is across every single industry. If you go to Target, if you go to Chick-fil-A, they all focus on their NPS scores. And that is the likelihood that their customers would recommend them to someone else. So we've sent out those surveys. I would say for noting, the average within the payment processing space is around 50. I just checked Chick-fil-A's this morning and it was around 56, I believe. So we've got a higher than 80 on the average. So we really pride ourselves on that. Hopefully that can provide a little bit more context on how we truly love the clients that we work with and value partnership. Okay, I know that was a lot of information. I do want to note that I'm happy to provide a little bit more context. Here's my contact information if you ever have any questions, or if you would like to see a live demo. I do have a sandbox environment of QuickBooks where we can walk through your specific scenario and we can maybe better understand how this would work specifically for your process. In addition to that, we have our website, basispro.com/QuickBooks. We've got some more information there that you can see regarding this integration. But it's been a pleasure speaking about this, and hopefully you all found this a little bit intriguing, and I would love to chat with you further if you think this is something that would be applicable to your day-to-day. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing here and pass it back.
Okay. I'm going to try to get ready for that. So while Matt, go ahead and launch their poll, and then we'll launch our standard sponsor poll, if you would. So the question I have is, most of the people who are on this call are pro advisors who are working with clients. They themselves might have a need for a different payment solution, but a lot of QuickBooks users are looking for alternatives. What kind of partnership arrangements do you have that you can partner with a pro advisor who then is going to promote your product and essentially bring you their client?
Absolutely. Yeah, great question, William. Thank you. That is something that we do offer. So we work with several other accountants, small accountants, even local to hear us around Kansas City, near us, excuse me. So that is something that we'd be happy to provide a little bit more context to you all if you all are interested in that. Again, if you are those pro advisors, we could bring you up to speed on the integration, answer any questions that you may have, and discuss what that partnership would look like.
Okay. We have a question. Do you all offer service in Canada and work with Canadian QuickBooks?
Great question. Jen, please correct me if I'm wrong. Today, as it stands, currently not, but that is something that we are always actively exploring.
Okay. And one question is, what are your transaction costs or cost per transaction?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's always the fun question of the payment processing industry, of course. So with that in mind, we do know typically with QuickBooks that rate is going to be around 2.9%. From a transaction cost standpoint, that's really going to vary depending on your volume, what type of credit cards you're taking, because as we all know, there are thousands and thousands of credit cards, and each of those have different rates and amounts tied to them. So
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
And lastly, they want to know, do you support other applications, general ledgers, really, in addition to QuickBooks?
Jen, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Currently, QuickBooks is the only ledger style ERP system that we integrate with. However, if there is a need, we're happy to sit down and have discussions and look at expanding that integration.
Okay. And yeah, I think that's all the questions we have.
Fabulous.
You mentioned cost per ACH transaction, and that's user configurable, correct? They can charge a cost.
Those admin fees.
Yeah.
Yeah. So up to 3% to cover the cost of doing business. It doesn't have to be 3%, and it doesn't have to be on just credit cards. It could be either ACH or credit cards or both. So okay, that can be adjusted as needed.
All right. Want to thank you for being here again today, and we appreciate your sponsorship. And so,
yeah, and we appreciate you all taking the time to invite us to this and allowing us to present a little bit more about us. Of course, as I mentioned, if anyone just wants to learn more or has interest in exploring this further, we'd be happy to chat. And thank you, Insightful Accountant.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. So folks, I skipped through this. One of my technical errors was somehow my PowerPoint wanted to start skipping slides. And these are our 3 learning objectives for today. Don't worry if you've missed any polls up to now. None of those polls were CPE polls. During Caren's presentation, we will have the 3 required CPE polls, and you must answer all 3 of those, right or wrong, in order to qualify for CPE, as well as being here for 50 minutes. And with that said, now I'm going to try to get back over here to in sequence. One of my bestest friends of all time, Caren Schwartz, is with us today. I think Caren and I have probably known each other almost our entire QuickBooks careers. And she is, let me just say, a legal niche guru. She knows almost everything that can possibly go wrong with legal accounting. She's seen it all, and she's here to share her experiences. I'll mention the fact that she was the very first recipient of Insightful Accountant's Niche Practitioner Award as part of our Top 100, and she's been a Top 100 Insightful Accountant recipient every year since we started. But she's kind of self-retired herself this year from the program. There's going to be an available spot because Caren has decided she isn't going to apply this year. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Caren and let her just get started on her program.
One second. Thank you, Murph. Murph and I have been doing this since we were about 10 years old, I think. I'm going to turn off my video just because sometimes it helps my bandwidth. So I'm going to skip over my intro slide and go right to my agenda. So we're going to talk about what's unique with law firms, how to implement some effective financial management practices for the law firms, using technology and some legal specific tools, and then building strong relationships and enhancing value, because that's what really keeps the law firms as clients. So what is unique about law firms? Well, there's a lot of things that I would say are unique about law firms. And in spite of what they will sometimes say, like, well, everybody must do it this way, almost every law firm does things a little bit differently. But law firms tend to be structured as partnerships or sometimes professional corporations. But even when they are a corporation, our experience has been that lawyers look at any spending as spending of their own money because of the way they get compensated or because of just the way their style, whatever. So they tend to be much more cautious about spending money than perhaps corporations, larger corporations or corporations tend to be, because they view it as coming directly out of their pocket. They also have more different models for compensation than you could possibly imagine. Everyone seems to be different, and they don't usually think about how am I going to get this data before they put the compensation model in effect. So they will design a compensation style, a way to compensate their people, and then they will decide, then they will try to figure out how they're going to get the information out of whatever system they're using, which is often a challenge. It really should go the other way. And talking to them about that can be very beneficial, especially when you're dealing with firms that are starting up. But they may compensate people based on origination, based on responsible. So who brought it into the firm, who is responsible for managing it within the firm, who did the work, how many hours they worked, how many hours they were billed, or the collections. And hours billed and collections, especially for employees, can be kind of tough for those people because they don't necessarily have control over the hours that are billed or the collections. They only have control over the hours they worked. And so you want to be very sensitive to that in terms of generating the compensation model. But also, if you base it purely on the billables or the hours, you're not taking account that not everything gets collected. And so the firm may not keep enough revenue for themselves. And these compensation models and all the different factors are things that are very important to talk with a firm about, and where an accountant or someone with knowledge about financials can give them some insight. In terms of billing, hourly has always been the most common. We are seeing more moves to flat fees, but a lot of times their flat fees are not based on value. They are still based on hours. They just come up with some version of flat fee. Certain types of law are very heavily dependent on contingency fees, especially personal injury. And in that case, the firm does not get compensated unless they win. And so they have to be very careful about what cases they take, because they could invest a lot of time with no return. But they don't necessarily do analysis to see what kinds of cases are making the most sense for them and where they are making money. So pointing those kinds of things out is another area where you can definitely add value for the firm. Another area is in retainers. The most common type of retainer for law firms is the trust or IOLTA. And there's actually two types of trust IOLTA retainers. A true trust retainer is actually money that the firm is holding on behalf of the client. It belongs to the client, and the account, the bank account, is in the client's name. That is true generally for rather large retainers. But there's also something called an IOLTA, which stands for Interest on Lawyers Trust Account. Those are designed to hold money that belongs to the client. It does not yet belong to the firm, but it is in small enough amounts or is going to be retained by the firm for a small enough amount of time that calculating the interest back to the company that gave the money does not make sense. And so that money is held in a separate IOLTA account. A firm may have more than one IOLTA account, depending on the states they practice in, what types of law they practice, who their clients are. And the interest on the IOLTA account generally comes in and then goes back out. And they need to, and that money is used by the state and the State Bar Association, often for things like lawyer fraud or indigent assistance in terms of legal fees. There are very strict rules that the lawyers need to follow and be able to do the accounting on. They have to be able to track every penny and which client it belongs to and give reports. And some states do random bar audits, and lawyers flunking a audit can lead to disbarment. So that's a very big deal. An operating retainer is limited in many states, so the lawyers have to be careful to not have them if they're not allowed by the Bar Association or by the state rules. But that is money that comes into the operating account. It's not deposited into the IOLTA or trust account. And the operating retainer could be considered income, like it's immediately earned, in which case it's not a true retainer, it's just money they haven't yet billed. or it could be money being held in the operating bank account that is going to be returned. So if a client uses the term retainer or IOLTA or trust, you really need to understand exactly what they mean and how the account is being used, because they don't always use them in the appropriate way. They often mix and match those terms. An evergreen retainer is one that is supposed to be refilled automatically. So if it gets below a certain balance, the client is expected to put more money in to reach a certain level. And if this is something that a client does, you want to make sure that whatever software they are using for doing their billing can properly handle this. As I mentioned, there are a lot of legal and ethical compliance rules. It is very important that they maintain accurate tracking and do their reconciliations and have accurate reporting on their trust and IOLTA account. It is a very large source of issues for lawyers. So an area where you can really add a lot of value to them. Because even though they learn some of this in law school, it's not focused on. One of the things that's very interesting in this country is very, very, very few law schools teach the lawyers about running a business and things like trust accounting, etc. Over in Europe, it is much more prevalent, but they don't learn these things and they really need to know them and understand them. Also tracking income and allocating the income. Lawyers often differentiate between soft costs and hard costs. Soft costs are things that they are paying for, but are not going to be written out directly from a bank account. For example, postage. They don't write out a check to pay for, $2 for this client's postage. It's part of their postage meter expense, but they may track it and charge the client for it. Hard costs are the things that they charge the client for and directly pay via check or credit card. Depending on the type of firm that they are, the type of law, they may have a need to track the hard costs on their balance sheet as a loan to their clients. Many firms, whether they have the rule or not, do track it there because it keeps that out of impacting their taxes. And so that can be a very good idea until it has to be written off, perhaps. But certain types of law do, by IRS regulation, have to track hard costs on the balance sheet. And I have often found that accounting firms are not aware of that IRS rule. So if you are working with law firms, make sure you are aware of whether the firm has to track the hard costs on their balance sheet as a loan to their client. And even if they don't, you may want to recommend it. You also want to look at how they are going to be allocating their fees. So do they track revenue collection based on who did the work, or based on who's the responsible attorney? And how do they track adjustments? Who gets the credit for things that are higher than the actual working, and who gets the credit for write-offs? And that may vary depending on whether it's a flat fee or it is just a straight hourly. But those are important things to be aware of, and they definitely affect the compensation plan. They also need to make sure that they comply with the legal industry regulations. There are strong rules for lawyers, both at the national level and at the state level, and they need to make sure they are very familiar with those. And of course, they need to have malpractice insurance. They also have to have correct reporting, and they generally should have internal controls for maintaining compliance. And that is an area that they often are lacking because they don't understand it. Many of the firms do not know how to read a balance sheet or a P&L, or other things of that nature. And so that is an area where also pro advisors and people who understand that, accountants, bookkeepers, can add value to the firm. So before we move into implementing effective financial management processes, Murph, do you want to put up a poll?
Yes, Matt, if you would, please go ahead and put up CPE polling question number 1. Folks, this is the CPE polling question. You must answer this question. Right or wrong, it doesn't matter. But you have to answer this question if you're wanting CPE. And we're going to give you about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more. Matt, go ahead, close the poll. And we don't need to see that. And Caren, you can head right on.
Okay, so hopefully you all got that one right. So now let's talk about financial management processes. So, oops, did I go backward? Nope, I think it skipped a slide. Okay, there we go. There we go. So one of the things that's very important is that they have good record-keeping systems. Lawyers are very good at keeping legal records. They're not necessarily as good about keeping financial records. They need to be able to handle audits, track collections, bill on a timely basis, and make sure that they are billing for the things they should be billing for. I can't tell you how many law firms I have walked into where every month they say generate bills for all of the time that was billed this past month. And they have people that went in and put in time after the prior month was already billed out. And that money never got billed because they are using a start and end date in their billing. And they've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of work in process that they can no longer collect because it's too old. And nobody paid attention to that. So you really want to look to make sure that they are billing on a timely basis, help them with implementing processes to track these kinds of things. And at the same time, make sure that they are meeting all of their regulatory processes. Because if they're not meeting the regulatory requirements, they're definitely got a problem. But even if they are not billing in a timely basis, and not working on collecting in a timely basis, they are losing money. They often have cash flow issues because of this. They don't budget because they don't understand necessarily understand budgeting. As I mentioned, they often have had no business management or office management accounting training. Lawyers will get out of law school or be part of a big firm and then decide they want to go out on their own. And they don't understand the intricacies of managing the business part. They understand the law part. They don't understand the business part. And so there's a lot of value that can be added. As I said, they often don't bill on regular schedules, which, as I'm sure many of you know, if you don't bill on a timely basis, it is much harder to collect. Because a client is going to be much more likely to pay something for work that was done last week than for work that was done 2 or 3 months ago. Also, law firms that deal with corporate environments often have to submit their bills in very specific formats, and which get uploaded to a portal, kind of similar to what happens with health insurance and doctors' offices. And if they do not submit it in the right format or in a timely basis, they may not be able to collect. And there are a lot of rules regarding those special audit houses and the formatting. So if a law firm is dealing with corporate clients, one of the things that you want to know if you're helping them is, do they have to submit electronic bills? Not meaning sending their bills via email, but actually uploading them to a portal and then looking at the requirements of that portal, of those portals. The most common format is called LEDS, LEDES, 1998. One of the things you will discover if you work with law firms that have to deal with LEDS is that while there is a standard that all of these companies are supposed to adhere to for collecting the information from the law firms, they all have decided to interpret the standards in their own way. And so the standards are more of a broad suggestion than an absolute, which makes for a challenge when dealing with the firm and helping them getting their billing set up and uploaded. Also, looking at managing costs. They need to understand their office expenses, optimize their technology costs, control personnel, and measure their client costs. If those hard costs are on the balance sheet, that's great. They're easier to track and keep track of, but they also have to recognize if they are paying for them before they collect from the client, that they need to make sure they are billing the client for those timely so that they get paid. And if they're not going to get paid for them, writing them off so they can take advantage of that expense as a deduction. So really watching over that and keep careful track of it is very important. So now we're going to move into leveraging technology and some legal specific tools. Is this a good time for question number 2?
I think it is, Caren. Matt, if you would, go ahead and throw open CPE polling question number 2, folks. This is CPE polling question number 2. It should have popped up. If it didn't pop up, chances are it's popped up behind a different window. So please track it down. And we're going to give you a few minutes because I know a couple of people couldn't find it a while ago, but we need you to go ahead and answer this poll as quickly as possible. And there is only one only one choice here. Hint, hint. Okay. And so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right.
Okay.
And almost
So looks
everybody
like-
got that right.
Yep.
My little
Great.
my little blooper answered
Thank
the
you.
question. Okay.
All right. So now let's talk about technology and legal specific tools. So while AI is becoming more and more prevalent within law firms, one of the big things with AI is they've got to be very careful about not sharing client confidential information. And so they should be looking at AI solutions that are designed for law firms, not using a generic like ChatGPT. But also at an even simpler level, looking at what accounting software they are using. While QuickBooks has a lot of very good features, it is not designed for law firms. And so they may want to be looking at other software for billing that will talk to QuickBooks, or software that will take the broad place for doing all of their legal work. And I can't just tell you that there is one best solution for everyone. That would make my life much, much easier. There are a lot of different legal billing and also legal accounting programs out there. Can you do your billing and your accounting in QuickBooks? Yes. You do have to make sure you use certain processes to make sure that you are tracking your compliance. And there are several different ways to do that. And I've talked about that in other webinars I've done. And I'm happy to talk to that more specifically with people. But as you work with law firms, you may find them using lots of different billing programs, trust accounting programs, other accounting programs. when you are looking at these, if they are integrating in with QuickBooks, it is very important to understand how they integrate, because how they integrate will affect your ability to run various types of reports. For example, many of the solutions that integrate with QuickBooks will send over invoices and payments on those invoices. One thing with most law firms in the US is that they report income on a cash basis. Well, that's fine, except that when the law firm gets paid, if they get a partial payment, they want it applied first to the expenses and then to the fees, because that impacts their taxes and make sure that those costs get paid and taken care of. Well, if it's being tracked that way in their billing software, but the invoice and the payment on the invoice is going over to QuickBooks, and QuickBooks only allocates income proportionately, they're going to have different information in different systems. So something to be very careful of and aware of is how the integration is done and how that affects their reporting. You also want to look at what they're using for practice management and how that relates in, so that they do not have to put things in twice. And what are they using for their calendar and for document management? It is very important that they are looking at the security of their information. They have a very strong requirement of, similar to what accountants have in terms of confidentiality, but sometimes I think it's even stronger, and making sure that whatever they are using is meeting those. And things like AI are very big there. AI, one of my favorite quotes is that AI will not replace lawyers, but lawyers who use AI will replace those who do not. It is expanding. It is integrating into more and more of the practice management software they are using. But I'm sure many of you have heard of the hallucination cases that have happened and the penalties that got associated with some lawyers who did that. And the protection of client information, as I said, using ChatGPT for doing research on a client may be a problem if any of the information you're putting in there is confidential client information. So using something that's designed for the law firms or is integrated in so that it is protected is a very good idea. And our last topic is going to be building strong relationships and enhancing value. So it's very important that you understand the needs of your client, of the law firms, offer solutions, but recognize that it is not a one-size-fits-all environment. Every firm is different. Even if they say they are the same as everybody else, they probably are not. If I had $1 for every company that has said, oh, well, this is a report that we run, but I'm sure every firm runs this report and I've never seen the report before, I'd be quite wealthy, because it happens so much. They are all unique in the things they do and what they do and how they do it. You can help guide them through regulatory changes. Very important to stay up to date on what those changes are that affect the law firms if you are dealing with law firms, and making sure that they are maintaining compliance. For example, the thing about the IRS rule for tracking hard costs that I mentioned is not known by many law firms, and it's also not known by a lot of accountants. Communicate proactively. That will make you a valued partner for them, and foster teamwork, because they really need help often in understanding the financial aspects of what they are doing. They are running a business, but they don't think of it that way. They are focused on the law side of it, and they need education and help on the business side. You can deliver education and training on financial topics to help educate them and to help empower informed decisions on their part. Advisory services allow you to add value. You can customize them to meet the needs, and even something as simple as knowing what term they prefer to use. Some people in firms prefer to be called attorneys, and some prefer to be called lawyers. There is not a difference that I am aware of. It is just a personal preference. But knowing that and using their preferred terminology is very helpful. So in order to excel as an accounting advisor to legal clients, you want to make sure that you understand the financial knowledge, the technology adoption, and help to build strong relationships with your clients so that you can support them in supporting their clients. I know that was a lot of information. We've got one more poll question. And then if there's any, we don't have a lot of time, but we can touch on a couple of questions if there's anything. So Matt, one more poll question, number 3.
All right. Let's give you 2 or 3 more seconds, and then we'll close this last CPE polling question. All right, Matt, go ahead and close that. We don't need to look at it. And Caren, I want to thank you for this outstanding presentation. You did cover a lot of material. I'm sure there'll be people who are anxious to get the recording and the deck today. And again, I want to thank you, dear, for being here. Folks, we've got to move on a little, and so we're going to give you one last opportunity. If you'd like to learn more about the Basis payment solution and their integration with QuickBooks, we would like for you to do that. And Matt, go ahead and reopen that poll. And this is a simple yes, no. So you should be able to answer that. And we'll go ahead and close that poll. And I want to mention again, we're still taking applications for the Top Advisor Awards. And if you are interested in that, there's the barcode or the QR code. You can scan that. That'll take you to the portal. And the portal allows you to select what award you're interested in, whether it's the top pro advisors or whether it's the international pro advisors or whether it's the new tax advisor awards that we're offering. And I'm sorry. And I have to mention our sponsors. And there should be another poll that Matt has opened about the awards. We want to know where you're at in the awards process. If you have missed a CPE poll, it is essential that you answer this poll with one of the answers that is available. We're going to give you an option. If you missed one of the 3 CPE polls, you can make up for it by answering this polling question. And again, the polls pop up. I can see it right here. And if you can't, it's probably hidden behind your Zoom window, or check down on your taskbar and make sure that it's not hidden down there behind the Zoom icon. And again, we'll be sending out information on how to get the deck and the recording. And with that, Our next QB Talks is our QB Talks app on March 4th, and that will be new apps for QuickBooks. And Question Telco will be with me, and she will be the presenter for the new apps for QuickBooks this year. And she's selected a group of apps that I think you'll find interesting and potentially beneficial depending on what your app requirements are or needs. And then next month for our regular QB Talks, the second show of the month on March 18th, we'll have another pro tips. And again, Question Telco will be with us because her niche is nonprofits. And so she'll be giving you tips for nonprofit entities and how to work with them and build a practice around nonprofits. And with that said, I want to once again thank Caren for being with us and presenting a very intensive, well thought out, and most beneficial program for those of you who are thinking about a legal niche. And I also want to thank our sponsor, Basis. And I want to thank each and every one of you who attended today. I think there was 108, and I appreciate you being here. And with that said, we'll sign off the air.